Hello everyone, I'm back again with another Photoshop tutorial. Based on the success of my last video, a couple of you have messaged me to see if I could do one for color images and to see if the same sort of techniques will still apply in the same way. Again, this is the type of tutorial that's going to feature individual selection instead of editing the whole image, which we know causes a lack of balance. I'm going to be doing individual parts. We are not looking to increase, say, the colour in areas like the snow. We want to keep that white, for instance. The overall final image is going to look something like this. And we are, again, just going to be dealing with sort of individual elements. So as you can see there, like before and after of on that particular waterfall, quite subtle changes, nothing too major. So I'm actually going to restart this now that I've got your attention. And again, I'm going to be looking to kind of select things like the sky, which is what I'm going to do first. I am going to be, just editing my selections and kind of refining them just like last time. I'm mostly going to be using quick select for this because what I'm going to be doing doesn't have very kind of distinctive borders. It might look like I want that horizon, but actually I just want to slowly fade it to that. So I'm going to be increasing my radius here. I'm going to be feathering it out quite a bit actually, and I'm going to be shifting the edge back as well quite a bit too. So let me just increase that feather even more. That's kind of more what I'm going for. All right, and you'll see that if I was to now do my levels, just like last time, Control and L, if I want to raise that, it's only going to do it to a certain point. It's, this bottom part where the horizon meets is just slowly faded in. And that's exactly what I want. I'm not going to go crazy on this, just like on the last video. We don't want to kind of draw too much attention from what are called the focal points of the image. The focal points are what you want to draw the most attention to. In this, I wanted to draw the most attention to this middle part of the waterfall when I took the original photograph. And when I actually realised that I kind of had it, I saw that there was quite a lot of people over here, and there was a few leading lines that, while they are good to lead your eye all around the photo and circle it, I feel like these take a little bit of unwanted attention away from take a little bit of attention rather away from this kind of central part. So what you'll also see me doing is I'm going to be increasing the sharpness of things like this. Now going back to the sky, I'm going to actually be showing you a new technique. We're going to go to image adjustments and we're going to go to color balance. This is kind of a relatively new one for me. What I get from it is that you can kind of alter the color values of the shadow, the midtones and the highlights, just like when we were working with tone. However, we're going to see what weighting the kind of the colors have to certain colors. And as you can see, look, if I was to increase the cyan red balance more to red, it's going to go redder. And I'm going to increase that cyan balance here. Right, I am going to be also looking to make these slightly more blue. And I'm going to look to do that in my highlights as well. So some of my lighter tones are going to be affected in this way also. I'm not going to be keeping it this vibrant, just so you know. You'll see this in a minute. All I'm looking at the moment is to kind of to up the values of certain colors so that the sky isn't dominated too much by kind of reds, greens, yellows, etc. I want it to be quite a traditional sort of blue sky. Shadows, I'm going to be doing a slightly different job in the sense that I want them kind of slightly more of the darker blue and less of the cyan. Now that I have that, I'm going to show you a new technique now. This is called the saturation. I touched upon it before when I was showing you the overall saturation, but now if I go back to Hue and Saturation, I'm actually going to reduce this a little bit. I'm just going to take the sting out of some of that colour because it is too sort of, I don't know, too concentrated for me. We do want this to pop out, and we do want the overall blue values to contrast some of the orange values here, which are going to be raised soon. But for now, I think that that's going to be fine. So what I'm going to do next is, you may remember from the last video, I'm going to go to select inverse. That's going to allow me to select everything but the sky. If you remember, I was looking to kind of to select certain things by using the select color range last time. If I wasn't to use the select color range, as you saw before, we are going to get the effect of everything being raised, and we don't want that. We want to be a little bit more specific than that. So I'm looking to kind of get this unusual sort of Icelandic grass on here. I don't know if I mentioned before, actually, this is a lovely kind of place in Iceland called Gullfoss Waterfalls. It's supposedly one of the more touristy places, but I actually think it's remained relatively sort of untouched. They've really done well with their tourism in that country. I'll tell you, kind of like raising their prices for a lot of things in Iceland and making it more expensive is certainly having that kind of positive impact on getting rid of like kind of tourists that will otherwise kind of treat the area poorly. Fuzziness, as we know, kind of like increases the sensitivity you want to one color or another. I'm going to kind of maybe keep that about there. So it's selecting all of this orange stuff. And these marching ants are going to make it quite difficult for me to see what I've got. So I'm just going to check my refine edge there. That is precisely what I want. That is literally perfect. I couldn't have done that better if I tried, really. Actually, that's worked out a lot better than I thought it would. We'll go to image adjustments and vibrance this time. Now, vibrance is good in that it doesn't just have a saturation bar, and it also has this. Vibrance is a little bit more subtle than hue and saturation in that, you know, it just kind of raises the richness of the color, not so much the concentration. So it really brings out the best of the color that you have. We are going to increase the concentration of it slightly. What I'm looking for here is a nice balance between the orange here and the sky there. And that's what I feel like I've achieved. You know, there's not much contrast now, but if you have that contrast, then that works out pretty well. I don't know if you guys are aware of the color wheel when you're dealing with kind of things like this. If you type in like maybe like simple color wheel, you'll get an awareness as to what colors stand out against others. So generally colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel, such as orange and blue, are going to stand out and contrast. Similarly, yellow and purple, red and green. Okay. So with that color wheel in mind, I feel like this offers like a nice enough contrast, and that is going to create like a good enough photograph. So if I press OK, I'm going to deselect and just see if that has worked out effectively. And generally, I'm pretty happy with that. Like it's not too bad at all. The next part of what I was going to do is because of the people over here, I wanted to kind of take a little bit of focus off them and kind of get a little bit more back on the foreground. The foreground has been blurred out slightly just purely because of the focus of the camera in the first instance when I was taking the photograph. Because of that, I'm going to have to go back, check what I've got is okay. Yes, I'm not going to refine that edge in this instance. I'm going to actually use a filter this time. Filter I'll go into in a bit more detail in other videos, but they basically are kind of custom settings that the computer can do a lot of the hard work on. So for example, Smart Sharpen here, which I'm going to use, you may see this from an earlier example actually. Yes, you can see it. Smart Sharpen allows you to literally kind of like make things kind of stand out a little bit more just through the outline details. But again, if I was to increase this by too much, it's going to cartoonify it quite as significantly, and it's going to reduce the image quality. We do not want that to happen, okay? We just want to have it enough so that it kind of like just is quite subtle and takes our gaze away from the background a little bit, which it kind of does. It also matches some of the detail like behind it a little bit. So if you were to look at this with the naked eye, you would see this first, that next, but you know, we'll kind of see what my overall aims are soon. I'm quite happy with that. What I may look to do is just go back to some of my old techniques. Let's use curves, why not, just for old time's sake. And what I'm going to do here is just maybe increase the light tone slightly, just to give it that little bit of pop. I put a dark sort of option on there to see, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to stick to lights. Okay, deselected. This is looking like it's really coming together now. However, there's like one key element missing from the photo, and that is this middle part here, which is one of the focal points that I want from the image. So I'm going to be looking to grab that, and I'm again going to be using the sort of like select the general area and then go to color range type sort of process. So select color range, and I'm just going to start off by, in fact, I'm going to maybe not include that top part just for now. You'll see why in a moment. Well, if I was to go back to color range, sorry, and I then click on this part here, taking the fuzziness down a little bit, you should hopefully be able to see that I have been able to grab like parts of the image that are kind of like this sort of like lighter blue here. I don't know if I want this selected, so after I've done that select color range, I'm actually going to remove this part here and just see that that is pretty much what I want to go for. Now that I've done that, what can I maybe do? We've done color balance, we've done vibrance. I haven't shown you hue and saturation in full yet, so let me just show you a couple of other features that it has. So I am going to be changing the hue here. I'm not going to actually do this for real, but I just want you to see the impact of what the hue can do. The hue allows you to kind of like to be a little bit more picky with your color. It's not quite as accurate as color balance. It's kind of like a little bit more informal version of it, and it's good for kind of like more graphic design type projects where you want to kind of like compare, like say, like a green banner versus like a kind of blue banner, and it allows you to slowly shift and change that. I am not going to be playing with that at all. Just cancel that. Instead, I am going to be just upping the saturation. Now, you can also increase the lightness here, which is what I'm going to maybe do. I'm going to decrease it rather. It was just maybe what I'm going to do, because I feel like before it wasn't kind of deep enough, the colour, and by increasing the saturation and decreasing the lightness, it allows me to get that pop back. Okay, so let me just check if that's looking okay. I'm pretty happy with that. That's looking like it's fit for purpose. You don't want kind of like the same colour as the sky or something like a waterfall, because the water movement and bubbles and the crashing of the waves and things like that are going to kind of disrupt how the light filters through, and you will get a slightly different result. Remember, in Iceland as well, there is natural ice that will filter the light out in a different way too, and kind of bounce it back and play, kind of little games there in that respect. So I'm going to select the top part now, and just to kind of like finish this image off, and we'll just see how we go with this. Again, it is going to be a matter of selecting and just using the color range. You'll notice there's a bit of like a kind of like trick to my process here. I do use this quite a lot. Narrow down my selection, get a particular like color, particularly when it's like it hasn't got a definite border and we want to leave things alone. So let's just see, and we'll refine the edge, and that is exactly what I want to use. Okay. I'm again going to use the same thing as before, because I feel like the lightness could be increased a little bit here. I feel like it is maybe a little bit too dark, and then I'm going to increase the saturation again. So preview, on and off. I actually want it to be a little bit lighter, so we'll kind of see how I get on with this. Okay. I don't know, actually. As you can see, if I zoom in, I'm going to be a little bit picky here. It's maybe posterized it a little bit too much. By posterized, I mean that it's simplified the color a little bit, and there's a little bit of noise with the color as well in the kind of like the blue that we've got there. So I'm actually going to go back in my history and I'm going to change that. You can see the original there. Yeah, actually, to help that, I'm going to just kind of remove some of this color over here, because I feel like it might get a little bit too disrupted. What I'm also going to do is I am going to feather out the color that I have as well on my refine edge. So that should help me a little bit more as well. Just kind of be a little bit kind of less specific with what I'm doing. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to increase the levels on it, so that it kind of like, it gets lighter, but it also kind of has a little bit of pop to it. Then I'm going to do Vibrance instead. And raising the Vibrance should have a more positive effect. In fact, yeah, that has worked fairly well. Let's go back, deselect. That looks exactly how I wanted it. In fact, that might be better than the original I put on before. So as you can see, there we go. We have now our final image. It's gone from a relatively bleak sort of waterfall, and I'm not going to lie, it was very cold on this day. But for the sake of a more sort of commercial style image to maybe advertise Gullfoss waterfalls on the internet, you kind of want to catch a viewer's attention, and this will do that. I appreciate I might get some comments in that the kind of like this isn't what the actual waterfall looked like. I am under no illusion of that. Like I'm kind of doing a more hyper real version of it. What the naked eye will have seen here, it would have adjusted to the conditions a little bit, and this would have popped out a lot more subjectively to the person. That would have popped out a lot more subjectively to the person. But the way that the camera read it with its kind of single point, with a single aperture rather, is that it's kind of a little bit bleak and a bit dim, desaturated, and it's having to kind of like to cancel everything out and balance everything. Whereas Photoshop allows you to kind of like to kind of get all these things in. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit now, so I'm maybe going to stop. But hopefully that was a good reminder for you as to kind of like what Photoshop can do in terms of these selection techniques to produce an image that is enhanced for commercial purposes. Okay, thank you very much for tuning in. There's going to be another video after this on outline cutouts. It is going to be the outline cutouts this time. I'm done with enhancement. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe. All the best. Thanks. Bye-bye.